And I'm excited to welcome you to this session here today. We've got a special recap session today of a town hall that I delivered last week that's created a lot of chatter, it's created a lot of buzz, it's created a lot of interest. And based on all that, I've decided to do a recap of that session here today. So what we're going to be covering here today is something that I'm calling the Great Sea Change, why the digital marketing playbook from the last decade is obsolete and where to shift your focus in the next 18 months. So for those of you not familiar, my name is Ryan Levesque. Nice to meet you. For those of you who are familiar, I want to say welcome back. I'm excited to have you back here. And it's great to be here together. And while we just give another moment or so for folks to get in on the call, we had a few folks said that they weren't able to get in. I want to just orient you to today's session and how things are going to work. So first things first, today's session is going to be raw and real. And what I mean by that is this is not a formal presentation with a bunch of fancy slides or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to be sharing some observations that I've made. I'm going to be sharing on my screen a number of raw data sources that I've been piecing together as I've been pulling on this string. Second, we're going to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. And so because of that, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already done so already, that you've got something that you can use to take some really great notes on everything that we're going to be covering here today. Over the last few weeks, for those of you who've been following the work that I've been putting out on social media, on places like Facebook, LinkedIn, if you're subscribed to my newsletter, then you've probably noticed that I've been spending a lot of time discussing how I believe the digital marketing landscape as we know it is literally shifting beneath our feet. In fact, just the other week, I wrote an article about cycles, patterns, and choppy waters ahead. And I'll pull it up on my screen so you can see what I'm looking at here. Friendly zoom. Let's do this right here. Share. There we go. And the week before that, I wrote about something that I coined as the sea change afoot. There's a sea change afoot. Can you feel it? And now, after having over 150 different one-on-one conversations with different business owners across a number of different industries, a bunch of different markets, a bunch of different types of businesses, and getting a very personal and up close and intimate view of what's really happening right now inside these businesses, based on what I'm seeing, I personally believe the following. I personally believe that what we are seeing and what we are in the middle of could be, so I stop sharing the screen right here, could be the greatest shift in digital marketing and commerce of the last 15 years. Now, for some, based on what I'm seeing, it's creating or is going to create a lot of pain. But for others, it's going to create a lot of opportunity. And the question that I've really been spending a lot of time spending research and exploration around is around what moves we should be making right now to be on the side of opportunity. And since this is a question that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, doing a lot of deep dive reflection into myself personally, I've decided to host this town hall and this recap that we're all on here today to share some of my biggest observations around what I believe to be answers to the three most important questions that we should all be asking and investigating right now, which is, number one, what's changed? Number two, what's actually working right now? And number three, what's coming next? Now, a few disclaimers before we get started. Number one, I'm going to be the first to admit that I do not have all the answers, but I've approached these questions with a learner's mind and deep inquisitive curiosity. I've done a lot of deep work, a lot of deep research, and I've made what I believe to be at least some interesting and perhaps useful observations. Consider today to be the beginning of a conversation, not the end or the end-all be-all of a conversation. Number two, I know some of you have asked, all right, so Ryan, what are you selling? What do you have for sale here today? And the answer is, I'm not selling anything on this town hall, but I do have an opportunity for those who are interested in going deeper on what we talk about here today. In full disclosure, this opportunity is $500, and it's something that I'll be sharing what it is, how it works, and everything about it in a breakout session that I'll be hosting at the end of today's town hall. That is a live only session. There will be no replay of that session. What happens in that session goes away after that session is over. So if you're interested, if you're curious, you'll have the option, but not the obligation, to join and hear what that's all about. So with all that being said, let's dive right in. Let's talk about the great sea change, why the digital marketing playbook from the last decade is obsolete, and where to shift your focus these next 18 months. By examining those three big questions that I introduced just a moment ago, which is what's changed, what's working, and what's next. So first, I want to take a step back and examine the digital marketing playbook of the last decade, at least for inbound marketing, what much of the world described as inbound marketing, which most of the people in this world, our world, my world, the world that we all share, have some version of in our businesses, which has basically been some variation of the following. You drive traffic to some sort of lead magnet, whether that's a download or a webinar or something like that. You get people onto your email list and you make one or more offers and continue to follow up over time. Now, I know that there are an infinite number of variations on that theme that I just described. You can do paid traffic, organic traffic. You can do video, non-video. You can do gated content, ungated content, et cetera, et cetera. But generally speaking, what I just described has been the playbook of the last decade. Traffic to an opt-in, get people on your email list and make an offer, or multiple offers over time. And this model has worked incredibly well over the last decade plus, until it didn't. And I wanted to get to the bottom of the reason why. So before we get into where all this research has taken me, I want to share a little bit around what took me down this rabbit hole, what took me down this path to begin with. So last year, we had a conventional digital marketing funnel in our business. And in this funnel, all conversion metrics checked out based on conventional targets. Our opt-in rates checked out, our show-up rates checked out, our sales conversion checked out, email clicks checked out, everything checked out. And yet, despite all of that, we could not get this funnel to a positive return on ad spend. We couldn't generate a positive ROAS. And we couldn't figure out the reason why. We tested different offers, we tested different creative. Our conversion across the funnel continued to be strong. And what we discovered in the process was that the root cause all came down to this. What we found was that over an 18-month period, our CPMs, which is an industry term for cost per thousand impressions, so our CPMs, more than tripled in the span of a year and a half. Meaning our traffic costs, our lead costs, and our customer acquisition costs more than tripled. And even as our conversion rates across every optimized variation of the funnel continue to hold strong, at least by conventional metrics, which would have made this funnel wildly profitable, unless we were prepared to triple our prices, this funnel could not make money. So I became very curious to know, was this something affecting our brand? Was it just affecting our business? Was it limited to our market? Or was it something more systemic? I wanted to get to the bottom of what changed. Now, before I get into that, I just want a quick straw poll inside the Q&A. You can let me know. For those of you who have been driving traffic over the last year, 2 years or so, I'd love to know, just among this group right here, have you seen your traffic costs get lower, cheaper? Have you seen your traffic costs stay the same? Or have you seen your traffic costs increase over that time? I'm just curious, kind of straw poll in this group right here. I've kind of given you a little bit of an insight into what we've seen in our business and our industry. And in a moment, I'll share some of the findings that I've had in over 150 different one-on-one conversations with business owners and digital marketers in different industries and spaces. Yeah, what I'm seeing right now is higher, increased, cost increase, increase, increase unless it finish, cost up, one staying the same. Traffic has more than doubled across all my clients. Higher costs have increased, definitely increased. Programmatic costs have increased, absolutely. And that's consistent with largely what I've seen. Now, by pulling this string and going down the first rabbit hole of trying to figure out what's changed, and now personally, like I mentioned, having conversations with over 150 different digital marketers, some people that you're going to know the names of in the industry, many that you're not going to know the names of, who run very successful businesses, digital business owners over the last few months. It led me to some of the observations that I'd like to share with you here today. Now, the first observation that I want to start by talking a little bit about is something that I shared a few short weeks ago. Now, this is the beginning of the conversation. It's not the end of the conversation, and it has to do with 4 funnel forces. So a few weeks ago, I started writing about these 4 funnel forces that are changing funnels forever, and I called them the zero-click reality, the MoFu gap, third-party data wars, and the great mobilization. Now, I'm not going to go into depth into those forces here today because we've got a lot of additional ground that I want to cover. But for those of you who may have missed that session, a quick recap is the following. So number 1, the zero-click reality. So zero-click reality, if you're not familiar, zero-click search, which I'm going to pull up on my screen right now. A zero-click search is a search on a search engine, most notably Google, that does not result into any sort of click. So if I go to my screen right here, this is an example, it's sort of meta of a zero-click search. It's a search where you type something into Google and it doesn't result in any click. You search what you're looking for and you find it without clicking on anything. Now, what's happening in this new zero-click reality, it's something that very few people are talking about right now. There was a study that came out earlier this year that 65%, and this is a great article that summarizes the study right here on SparkTour, which is Rand Fishkin's business, 65% of all Google searches here today no longer result in a click to any website. Think about that for a minute. This is a little talked about byproduct of AI and LLM. So we just looked at an example of the search right now. So Google, in the AI arms race right now as we speak, is trying to leverage AI to deliver search results right there inside of the search listing itself without requiring anybody to ever click. Now, the net effect of this is that inventory for SEO marketers, people who rely on organic traffic, has dropped overnight by 65%. Think about that for a minute. Now, one of the net effects of this is that because you've got so much less inventory available on the organic side of marketing, you've got all these businesses, all these websites that need that traffic. They need that traffic one way or the other. So where are those advertisers going? Where are they shifting their focus? They're shifting their focus on paid spend. So you've got all these SEO marketers who can't get traffic to their website because of a systemic change that's happening in search. We're going to talk about social in just a moment. And so these websites, these businesses are now saying, well, we need traffic. Where do we go? We're going to flood into paid media. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other forces right now affecting paid media that's creating a dynamic that's unlike anything that we've ever seen. Second force, what I call the MoFu gap. MoFu stands for middle of funnel, the middle of funnel gap. If you haven't read it, this is one to read. According to Google's 98-page landmark study, the messy middle, the idea of the linear funnel that we've seen so many diagrams around that we're all very familiar with is antiquated and obsolete. It doesn't exist. The idea that someone clicks on a landing page, gets their information, follows the next step in your funnel, and then the next step in your funnel and buys from you is obsolete. It doesn't exist. It's an easy framework for us to get our minds around, but it's not really a thing. And Google spent 98 pages doing this incredibly well-researched study documenting the reasons behind this. And the fact that there's this gap that exists. And this gap exists for a whole number of different reasons. This gap exists because the channels themselves, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the LinkedIns of the world, don't ever want their users to leave LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, etc. They don't want to make it easy for small business owners like you and I to put a link in one of our posts that we can use to drive people off their platform and on our platform. So the MoFu gap is this. The MoFu gap, the middle of funnel gap, is this gap that it's relatively easy in today's environment to get and build awareness for our brands. You just need to be in channel, do a podcast, do a YouTube video, do an Instagram reel, to an article on Facebook. It's easy to build in-channel awareness, top of funnel. Generally speaking, with the businesses that I'm either an advisor in, I'm an investor in, that I have a partnership within, it's relatively easy when someone's at bottom of funnel to get them to convert. You get someone on a sales call, on a webinar, it's relatively easy to get them to convert. But the universal force right now is this gap, bridging that middle of funnel gap, getting someone off channel into your ecosystem so that you even have a chance to bring them to bottom of funnel. Third force, third-party data wars. In the middle of all this right now, you've got these big multi-billionaire and multi-billion-dollar and $1 trillion tech companies that are all fighting this silent war right now. They're all withholding data from one another. Google doesn't want Apple to know anything about its data. Apple doesn't want to share any of its data with Meta. Google and Amazon right now are at war with one another. And what's happening is that all these big tech platforms are withholding third-party data from one another, and in turn, us. And that's creating a major problem because the black boxing and Chinese walling off of data has meant that we no longer can rely on platforms to target our user base. Now, there's some regulatory forces at play that are creating this dynamic. So you've got privacy laws originally coming out of Europe and GDPR popping up in, I think, 31 of the 50 states in the United States right now. Every single month, you see new legislations popping up. It's made it more and more difficult for us to have access to third-party data. But the real war that's being played right now is that all of these big tech companies don't want to share their data sets with one another because they know he or she who has access to the most data wins. Next, force number 4, the great mobilization of the internet. Quietly, 98% of all Facebook traffic emanates from a mobile device. 90% of YouTube traffic emanates from a mobile device. Over 60%, almost 2/3 of all internet traffic is now mobile and now growing. So what that means is your funnel needs to fit on your customer's phone, not on their laptop. Your entire brand needs to fit, the experience needs to fit in your customer's hand, not on their desk. Now, this is the beginning, but not the end of the conversation here today. That's some useful backdrop to talk about some of the cumulative forces, the confluence of what's happening all at once right now. And I want to take a look at each of these forces and their impact on this conventional digital marketing playbook, starting with the first big domino in traffic. So, traffic generation. Let's take a look at this. When it comes to traffic, the traditional SEO game is officially dead. It's dead. And it's dead for a number of reasons. I'll get into those reasons in just a moment. But at the same time, what's interesting, and this is sort of the kind of worldview that starts to come together when you start putting all these pieces and assembling them, is that at the same time, ad revenues at Google and Meta are soaring right now. So I'll show you what this looks like. So ad revenues at Google and Meta, which is the duopoly on paid media here today, over 60% of all paid media spend is on those two platforms online. Think about it. This is a brilliant move by Google. They're forcing advertisers to spend more money to compete now that there's less organic inventory, and they're seeing record ad spend online. There's less organic inventory that's driving up the cost of ad inventory. Supply is down, demand is up. And based on the 150 conversations I've had, the only people making money right now in paid media are, number one, the platforms themselves. Google's making money hand over fist. Meta's making money hand over fist. And number two, the agencies and service providers who have a vested, selfish self-interest in getting you to spend money on those platforms. Think about it. If you're a paid advertising agency, you need to present that paid advertising as a successful, viable avenue. But when I talk to the actual commercial end businesses that are driving traffic, nobody is making any money. Nobody is generating a positive return on ad spend. Now, I believe that there will be a correction because even a dynamic that we have right now is not sustainable. If nobody's making money, at some point, people are going to start pulling the plug. Now, the dynamic that layers onto what's happening with Google and Meta and everything that I've just described with AI, large language models, and the change to organic search engine listings has to be layered on top of this. Right now, you have a bunch of PE-backed businesses, so private equity-backed businesses. All right, Zoom, playing games with me here. Right now, you have a bunch of private equity-backed businesses that are struggling to hit top-line revenue targets. I know this because I'm involved in CEO groups. I'm part of groups like Tiger 21. I'm part of executive CEO groups. I'm part of investment groups. So I know what is happening in these spaces right now. These private equity-backed companies right now are struggling to hit top-line revenue targets. And when a PE-backed company needs to hit a top-line revenue target, one of the first moves in the playbook is to spend aggressively on paid media to drive acquisition. You drive new customer acquisition predictably by spending more money. You put more money in, you get more money out. But at some point, even the deepest pocketed financial backers will put the brakes on paid media because you can only lose money for so long. It doesn't matter how much money you have. And I believe when that point happens, the supply-demand curve will rebalance. But in the meantime, the Google Meta duopoly on paid media right now has made it increasingly opaque. Google, if you're not familiar, has launched and has gone all in on their PMax algorithm, performance max algorithm. Meta has gone all in on their broad match algorithm. So what we have now is we have less transparency today on targeting options that we have access to as small business owners on a channel basis, making it increasingly difficult for us to take the learnings that we have on any one of those platforms and move them over to another channel. We put money into a black box, and out of that black box, we get a result. We get about results. Now, let's talk a little bit about customer acquisition a bit more broadly. So at the end of last year, 2023, another one of these forces that I've been trying to put these puzzle pieces together, there was a giant wave of price increases across nearly all areas of VC and PE-backed marketing tech. When I say marketing tech, these are the platforms that we use to run digital businesses. So everything from MailChimp to Wistia all had these massive price increases, and it happened all at once. Now, my hypothesis as to why this is true, this is another one of the plays in the PE and VC playbook. When new customer acquisition slows, when you can't hit top-line revenue targets with new customer acquisition, where do you go? You raise prices with your existing customers. It's a classic move. It's a 101 move. Now, typically that happens on an individualized basis. A company will be struggling individually. They'll raise prices on existing users. But when it's happening systemically across the entire sector, an entire category of product, all raising prices at once, what's going on? Well, part of what's going on is you've got a small handful, relatively speaking, of PE and venture funds that are financing these businesses. They see something happening in one of their portfolio companies, they apply it in all the rest. And there's overlap. If you look at the Venn diagram, you start seeing the overlap of who's actually involved. Now, these VC and PE-backed technology businesses are under a tremendous amount of pressure to grow. They have to hit top-line targets no matter what. It's not like a bootstrap business, or if you've got an organic business that you get to decide how hard you're going to work and how far you're going to push things. You've got investors breathing down your neck, telling you that you need to hit aggressive growth targets. Now, due to the nature of leveraged PE private equity debt invested into these businesses in the low interest rate environment through COVID, which was 2020 to 2022, really 2020, 2021, when interest rates dropped in response to the fears that the COVID-19 pandemic was going to spurn a worldwide recession, all this money flew into the space. And now, a few years later, as the COVID bump has kind of slowed down, and we're seeing a softening in the economy right now, there are targets that these companies need to hit at all costs. And because new customer acquisition growth is slowing, what they're doing is they're increasing prices on existing customers. Now, we use a number of these tools, and I've been in business for over 17 years, and I've never, ever, ever in 17 years seen the number of price increases on technology happening all at once across the board. I'll give you a few examples of this. I'm going to mention a few companies right here. So take a look on my screen. This is an example of what I'm talking about. This is Keep. So Keep, formerly known as Infusionsoft, at the end of last year decided to give a price increase to all the existing users. Now, the headline number was a 10% price increase, but when you actually go through the net effect based on usage, based on overages, based on the number of emails that you're sending, for a business like ours, it resulted in a 50% price increase for us to use this technology. Now, in our business, we have a keep bill that is close to 5 figures every single month. This is not a few $100s. This is thousands and now tens of thousands of dollars. I have been a Keep user across my businesses going back to 2010. We are a 7-figure client of this firm. And when we told them, hey, time out, like, can't do this, they basically told us to eat dirt. We said, fine. The cost of switching is high. We'll take this punch. We'll deal with it. And then 6 months later, they did the same thing. So why would a company risk losing its absolute best customers unless the pressure is incredibly high? Now, I'll talk a little bit more about what this means for other forces. The second force, accelerated with the advent of AI, more specifically LLM, there's also this new wave right now as we speak of new tech entering into the space. So what this does, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on legacy tech options, old technology that no longer can keep up. Now, there's an opportunity with this that we'll get into just a little bit later, but the big takeaway is this. The cost of new customer acquisition is up for everybody, and it's never been harder and more expensive to generate new customers. And the only groups that will try to make an argument otherwise are those who have some sort of vested interest in you spending money to generate traffic. In other words, the traffic platforms themselves, Meta, Google, etc., and the service businesses who benefit from this ecosystem. Agencies, service providers, independent contractors who want you to spend money with them to generate traffic. Now, before you kind of like wave your arms in the air and say, oh my gosh, this is terrible, it's not all doom and gloom. And I've got some thoughts and answers, possible answers that I'll share with you on this in just a moment. But first, let's talk a little bit about email. Now, email is not dead, but it's definitely evolved significantly as a channel. Now, of course, as you're probably familiar, Apple shook things up back in 2022 with the iOS 14 and then later the iOS 15 updates. Those two updates effectively eliminated our ability to accurately measure email open rates. Meaning, whatever number your email service provider is telling you right now, whatever that number is when you log into your Keep account, MailChimp accounts, ActiveCampaign accounts, whatever tool you use to send emails, that number that you are getting as your open rate is a guess. And you should not be considering that an actionable number that you make any sort of tactical or strategic decisions around. Then in February this year, Google came out with its own updated set of email rules for sending email to Gmail users. And I'll show you what this looks like right here. This was the next big shockwave to the system. And here's the reason why. So Gmail is one of Google's most important properties for data acquisition. And the reason for that is because Gmail gives Google access to tremendous amounts of incredibly intimate information about you and the contents of every email you've either sent or received. Google has access to all of that. So what that means is this. If people stop using email, if people stop sending email, if they stop using Gmail as a platform, if people start shifting their communication platforms to something like Telegram, Signal, Discord, this would yield a crippling blow to Google's core business model. So what that means is Google is going to protect user inboxes at all costs, even if it means cutting the knees off email as a communication platform for people like us as marketers. They're not going to risk that. If people stop using email because they're getting flooded with spam and marketing email that they don't want to deal with, which is already happening with the younger generation, most of us on this call are too old to recognize this, but younger people, I'm talking about people who are born after the year 2000, younger people, their relationship with email is very, very different than the relationship that most of us on this call have. Let's talk a little bit about alternative forms of communication. Let's talk about social. Let's talk about Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and more. Right now, organic reach is down across the board for everybody. The platforms have become cesspools filled with regurgitated AI content. Have you seen it? Yeah. In some of these platforms, the comments are a complete joke. I'll show you an example of this. So right now on LinkedIn, the comments on LinkedIn are a complete joke. And LinkedIn has no idea what to do about it. I'll show my screen here. This is a recent exchange that I had on a LinkedIn post. This is just one example of literally thousands. I wrote this post right here. And this post was on the sea change, incidentally. And you can see right here an example of this person right here. The zero-click reality signifies a paradigm shift driven by AI's ability to provide instant answers, impacting SEO strategies, necessitating a focus on paid media. The MoFu gap highlights an evolving blah, 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 blah. My response was, checking for human status on this comment? And the response? Understood. I'll focus on your core subject. And it's this over and over and over again. Now, as the saying goes, marketers may ruin everything, but the developers and tech bros behind this technology must be at least partially culpable as well. We've got Mark Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress. We've got Sam Altman stealing Scarlett Johansson's voice and publicly denying it. We have, in case you missed it, oh gosh, I'll pull this one up. Most recently, we have a leaked Eric Schmidt video. Everyone know Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google? We have a leaked private Eric Schmidt video of a private talk that he delivered at Stanford just the other week, which you've got to watch, by the way. Just search for it on YouTube. And what he admits, not realizing he was being recorded, will blow you away. These people in power with questionable morals and ethics do not have our best interests at heart, and they will change the rules on a whim, wiping out entire small businesses in the process. I'll give you an example of this. Everyone familiar with Google's HCU, the Helpful Content Updates? So Google has something that they've been running over the last 2 years called HCU. And what that means is they're changing what actually shows up in the search engine results. And they're changing these rules overnight. In fact, you can see the change log. I'll pull it up on my screen. You can see the change log of what this actually looks like and how quickly they're making these moves. So this is an example of the change log and what they're doing. Now, what's happening is that businesses are basically being nuked and decimated overnight. I'll show you an example of this right here. This is, I think it's this one right here. This is Lars Lofgren. Now, if you're not familiar with Lars, Lars is one of the best growth marketers of our generation. He's the guy behind Ramit Sethi's business, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He's the guy behind Neil Patel's business. He most recently was the guy behind QuickSprout, which is a site that's been around forever in the digital marketing space. And that site, which is an incredibly high-value site that delivers a tremendous amount of value, it's been around forever, got nuked overnight. What that means is it was obliterated from the search engine results, disappeared as if it never even existed. In a smaller way, I have my favorite sourdough recipe that I have a link that I store on my phone. It's a recipe that I've been going back to for 5, 6, 7 years at least. And what I do when I make sourdough is I just click on the link on my phone, I go to the recipe and I try to find it, except for the fact that I couldn't find the results. And I realized that I wasn't linking to the site, I was linking to the Google search result for that site. It no longer pops up. I don't have the URL. I don't remember what recipe site this was from. But thankfully, what I did is I photographed with a screenshot the recipe. So I have the exact search language, and I did an exact search result in quotations to find the exact phrasing that is unique to that page. I'm telling you stuff that you would not find on any other website anywhere in the world, but I don't know what the URL is, so I can't type in the URL itself. I typed in the exact match search. It doesn't show up. It's gone. And that leads me to what I believe is a key part of the central thesis behind my research over the last several months. And the reason why I believe the digital marketing game and the playbook of the last decade has completely changed, and it comes down to one word: trust. Now, it's no surprise. We've lived in a world for some time now where the default state of the world is a state of distrust. People are walking around on a daily basis with their BS detectors on high alert at all times. And this is especially true among those younger audiences that I mentioned and demographics, especially anyone under the age of 30. Like, if you spend any time on the internet, any time on forums like Reddit or in private communities like Discord, you're going to find that anyone under the age of 30, everything in the world is a scam. I'm talking everything. You could be selling something, it's a scam. You could not be selling something, it's also a scam. And there's more and more data that's starting to leak that the FANG brands, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and more, are hiding more from us as consumers than we may even realize. And that may be even apparent on the surface. I'll give you an example. Right now, the estimate on Amazon.com is that as much as 60% of all consumer products that you put on your body, on your skin, or in your mouth is counterfeit. These are products predominantly coming out of China that Amazon has no way to police. I'll give you a few real examples. Everyone familiar with Berkey water filters? So Berkey water filters, if you're not familiar, are designed to remove all toxins from your drinking water. And people use it to purify water for infants, infant formula. And while the original Berkeys were the real deal, the ones that were first released years ago, the estimates are for the last 5 years, virtually 90% of all Berkey filters sold on Amazon were completely fake. In fact, I was affected by this personally because the last time we bought Berkey filters was 3 years ago, and we got a refund from Amazon for the product. Now, that leads me to believe that Amazon does not want to get into a lawsuit. They know the number of people who've been affected by something like this, and the drinking water that you put in your body is no joke. I'll give you another example. The largest brand of hand sanitizer, when supply exploded coming out of China in the middle of COVID-19, has now been found to be filled with benzene. Benzene, if you're not familiar, is a petroleum-based solvent that is carcinogenic. So all that hand sanitizer that you put on your hands in COVID because you're freaking out about catching germs, turns out we're just getting cancer. Amazon has no way to police this problem. So what they've done, what's happened now, is the state of California has deputized private citizens by passing a statute that you and I can pay to have any product that we buy on any online retailer, including Amazon, independently tested at an independent lab. And if that product is proven to be counterfeit, if it's proven not to contain what it says on the label or what's advertised on Amazon, we can seek damages. We can actually go to Amazon. We can provide this proof through the state of California. And what Amazon will do, Amazon has to hold money in escrow. When you sell on Amazon, they hold money in escrow for refunds and things of that nature. What they will do is they will release that escrow to you as the deputized private citizen finding this fraud. And now businesses are cropping up doing this very thing. Speaking of Amazon and trust, what about Amazon reviews? I don't know if you got this news, but Amazon has been experimenting, and this is just in the last few weeks, with a new search feature that displays products without any review content whatsoever. Why is Amazon hiding their reviews? This is Amazon's killer app. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I buy something on Amazon, I go straight to the reviews. I look, is this like something that like one person bought and it's like a 1-star review? Or have there been like 10,000 buyers with like a 4.5-star review? I use the reviews to decide if it's worth purchasing or not. So why is Amazon taking down all the reviews? Is the FTC coming down hard on them, much in the same way that they're coming down hard on other advertisers, raising the standards on what constitutes a real review? Does Amazon know that in addition to the products that they're selling being fake, that the reviews of those products are fake as well? I don't know. But we're in a world right now where we're all experiencing bits and pieces of stories just like the ones that I've shared in our own lives. And the result is that we are in a constant state of distrust. But this gets to the central piece. What I think it all comes down to is this. And this, by the way, is the big change that's come with the advent of AI-generated content. And what takes us to this very moment in time. We no longer trust ourselves to be able to discern what's real and what's not real. I'll say that again. We've lost trust in our own ability to determine whether something is real or something is fake. And that, I believe, is at the core of everything that's going on right now. I'll give you an example. I flashed it on the screen just a moment ago. Have you seen this one? What I'm about to share with you on the screen is this right here. These are photos generated from a brand new AI model called Flux. These are not real people. They do not exist. In just a few months, we've gone from photographs with 6 fingers and weird stuff happening to people that look like they could be your niece or your nephew. The type of person that if you and I are connected on social media and you posted a photo like this and said, I'm so proud of my daughter who just got a job at Google at the TEDx whatever event that did this talk, I'm going to be fooled. I'm going to say, whoa, congratulations. We've lost the ability to discern what's real and what's not real. So the question is, what do we do about it? Where do we go from here? And that's where I want to shift focus of this conversation right now and answer the question, what's the solution? What's the new digital marketing playbook in this great sea change? Now, I don't have all the answers. I'm on this journey with you. I'm just pulling on the string, doing the research. I'm going down the path. I'm in the middle right now of listening to, for the second time, Ryan Holiday's great book, Ego is the Enemy. And I just put it in my notes literally this morning. And he introduced this phrase that I wasn't familiar with, this idea of the anthembulo. The anthembulo was something that existed apparently in ancient Rome. And it was a role that you might have, and it translates to one who clears the path. It's just the person who just walks ahead and clears the path. And that was a job. If you were a successful merchant, or if you were a high-ranking official, you would have an anthembulo who would walk ahead of you to clear the path. And that's where I feel like I am right now. I haven't figured anything out. I'm clearing the path, but I know that this trail is the trail to be on. Now, while I don't have the answers, I have some thoughts. And as often is the case, when there is a sea change afoot like this, one answer, an answer that every single one of us can apply, is to zig when others zag. Or to put it another way, to choose the road less traveled. I'll give you an example. So right now on social media, you have everybody telling you to do some variant of the following. Go to ChatGPT. Tell it to give you 30 days of social media content. Upload the results to Canva, and then boom, in 60 seconds, you've got like 30 social media posts. I mean, come on, please. Where do you think that is actually going to get you? Think about it. For every person who does this, there's going to be some sketchy bro marketer out there who says, dude, like, what if we double that? What if we do like 60 social media posts and we post 2 times every day? That's like double the content. Or the next guy who says, no, wait, what if we do 3 social media profiles, post 2 times a day, create 30 days of content for each of them? That's like 6 times the content. Or the next guy who says, what if I hire 100 people in India to manage 10 social media profiles each, posting 4 times a day for every single one of them? That's like 4,000 times the content. Where does it end? And even worse, if that's what you're doing, all that you're creating, your entire contribution to the world is just more noise, unwanted, unneeded garbage, contributing to the memification and over-sensationalism of social media. So what's the zig when they zag move here? Well, for starters, how about using zero AI in your writing. Blasphemous, I know, right? But how about focusing on quality over quantity? How about handcrafting every single word yourself? And instead of focusing on the reactional, transactional, commoditized, anonymized click counts, what about focusing on deepening your relationship with a much, much smaller group of real life human beings whom you actually get to know and who actually get to know you? What Kevin Kelly famously describes as the 1,000 true fans. Now, that's just one zig when they zag example that you can easily employ. Trust, which is the single most valuable form of currency here today. It's not USD and it's not BTC. It's trust. Trust is derived from transparency and vulnerability. Now, there's a tech movement in the SaaS and software space, which is described as build in public, which is where you're demonstrating what you're building in public. You're taking people behind the scenes. But a move for every single one of us here could be the following. What about learning in public? What about pivoting in public? What about admitting in public that you don't have all the answers, but you're on a quest to find them? I'll give you another zig when they zag move. Get rid of your over-engineered funnel and go ultra light with your tech. I'll give you an example of this right here. The days of the over-engineered, highly automated, multi-step funnel are behind us. I'll give you an example on my screen. For this particular session right here that we are on, that we're at capacity on, by the way, people literally writing in right now as we speak saying, how do I get in? It's full. Was filled with a simple little Facebook post with a comment trigger word that you see right here and a few versions of that. The page that you got to be on this session right now, not a fancy registration page, just a simple Zoom link. That's it. Another zig when they zag move. Another zig when they zag move. AI versus no AI. I don't know if you saw this announcement, but a company called Procreate, which is a software technology for creatives for designing on tablet screens, made a big announcement that they've decided that they're putting no AI into their product. Or you could just do what my friend Nathan Barry did over at ConvertKit. When all those companies that I mentioned just a moment ago, the software companies started raising their prices all at once, they decided to zig when everyone else was zagging. They decided to, instead of raising their prices, they offered a free plan with the highest limits ever to welcome over a bunch of new users and a mass exodus of customers from Keep, which we looked at just a moment ago, MailChimp, and elsewhere. Another zig when they zag move. Try this out. Write this down. Go 1 month, heck, go 1 week in your business, eliminating all automation, just as an experiment. No automation. Write all the content yourself, respond to all the comments yourself, respond to all the emails yourself, respond to all the social media comments yourself. Don't try to fool people into thinking that they're talking with a real life human being when you're actually using an automated AI chatbot. Think about what happens at the end of that exchange. Think about it. Yes, you might be able to fool people into thinking that they're talking with a real life human being, but what happens when they find out that they're not? How does that reflect on you? Does that build or destroy trust? Does that make someone feel clever or foolish? You don't want to create that experience for your customers. So zig when they zag. When the rest of the world is doing that, infatuated with, hey, I tricked my people into thinking that they're actually talking to a human being, but it's really an AI voice bot. Instead of going down that route, just zig in the other direction. Actually talk to them. You might be surprised with what you discover. So what opportunities are on the horizon right now? I'll give you a few right now. Number one, in-channel social commerce. The model to move people off channel is just going to get tougher and tougher. Facebook wants Facebook people to stay on Facebook and never leave. LinkedIn is the same. YouTube is the same. So we're going to see more and more that the entire funnel, and I use that in air quotes, lives entirely within channel. So for example, a few weeks ago, you may have heard the announcement that TikTok and Amazon have a partnership. They announced a partnership just the other week, and I think we're going to see even more of this. In fact, on the original town hall, this is crazy. I made a few predictions. And one of the predictions that I made was that Shopify is a brand to watch. I said, watch what Shopify does. I think we can learn from Shopify. And literally within an hour after that town hall ends, this announcement came out. YouTube to take on TikTok Shop by forming a partnership with Shopify. So now we got YouTube and Shopify. We got TikTok and Amazon. Google and Amazon won't play nice together. So that's one of the reasons why they've gone in that direction. And what I believe the net effect of what you see right here, what I believe this net effect is that we are going to see the beginning of the end of middleware. What I mean by middleware is going to be removed from the entire funnel equation. YouTube, owned by Google, wants to own the viewer, the customer. They want you to pay to advertise on their platform. And now they also are going to take a piece of the e-commerce revenue generated from the platform itself. You better believe it. YouTube has a deal with Shopify that any product bought through Shopify on YouTube, a portion of that's getting kicked back to Google. Why would they leave a giant middle of funnel leak in their system when they can own the piece of the entire customer journey? Number two, I believe Reddit is one of the next big social opportunities. Here's the reason why. And I'll take you to a search result so you can see this in action. So Google has a deep partnership with Reddit. There are a few large players right now, three of them being Google, Amazon, and OpenAI, that are all hungry animals with voracious appetites for access to natural consumer language. Google formed a partnership with Reddit to have access to all of the raw natural conversations taking place on the platform. As a result, what Google has done, if you haven't seen it, is Google is now featuring Reddit results on virtually every single search page. So this is a search that I just typed in the other day, last night with my son. We have some mountain ash trees on our property here on the farm, and they produce these absolutely stunning orange yellow berries at this time of year. And they cluster together like elderberry, but they're a bright orange yellow, like a sea berry. And you can't ignore them. And every day that we walk by the mountain ash, he asks, can you eat them? And I knew a little bit about mountain ash berries and the ways to prepare them. So I just typed in the search right here. Can you eat mountain ash berries? And you can see this dynamic right here. Number one, 0-click search, all right here at the top. 1 or 2 websites straight into Reddit. This is brand new. This was not the case even just 3 to 6 months ago. Why is Google featuring Reddit? Because they want people to engage in Reddit so that they can get more natural consumer language happening into the mix. Now, Reddit is an interesting opportunity because for all its worth, Reddit is one of the few places on the internet where there is honest conversation and discourse taking place. Now, it is one of the places with the most cynical audience in the world. But what that does as a benefit is that the only way content gets upvoted on Reddit and therefore is actually seen is by passing some of the most stringent quality filters. Now, Reddit may be filled with a bunch of shit posters, but there's very little tolerance for bullshit. That said, even Reddit isn't immune from marketers ruining everything. You can see right here, spammers are already exploiting it. So marketers are already ruining Reddit. I'll give you an example of how that happens. So what happens is someone becomes a mod on a subreddit. So that means they have control of what posts get pinned, what shows up at the top. They create multiple accounts to create a fake conversation taking place on Reddit. Every account is upvoting the post. So people are getting their stuff all the way showing up to the top. So with every one of these opportunities, there is going to be a change on the horizon.